Okay, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. My name is Richard from the Seneca team, and today we're going to look into Seneca and remote learning and how those two things can work together to support support what you're doing in school to work with your students. Now, the session is going to last about half an hour, about 20 to 25 minutes. That will be me going through some information for you. And the way we're going to frame this session is around an EEF literature review to understand really what the research says about home learning and how you can sort of apply that through the lens of Seneca, but also looking at some other apps that you might find useful as well. And this is going to be then followed by some time for some questions. So if you have any questions on remote learning generally, or anything Seneca related more generally, you're really happy to answer those as well. If you're interested. So it's important to say that if you have any questions, please do ask them as and when they come into your head. I might answer them later on, but that's fine. And what I'll do is towards the end of the session, as I said, I'll leave some time. But if you want to ask questions, just pop them in the chat. So just where I'm typing here, you'll see that pop up at the bottom of your screen. You can pop some questions in there as and when you have them. But welcome and thanks for joining. So to run through a bit of a background on what we're going to be looking at in this session. So as I say, we're going to look at this EEF literature review in a bit of detail and the recommendations that are made on this review. We're also going to be looking at how Seneca can help you with the different recommendations, but also what other resources there are available to support you during this period of remote learning that we're all experiencing. Now, the EEF review looks at five key recommendations that it makes when implementing strategies to support pupils' remote learning, but also looks at supporting parents as well and think about how you can do that. And the sort of methodology behind this research is that it examines the existing research and it looks at about 60 different reviews and meta-analyses for different approaches that schools could use to basically deliver learning remotely. And this is a review that was commissioned by the DfE back in April when all of the coronavirus stuff was starting to kick off and schools were closed and people were looking around for resources to understand how best to deliver this new way of schooling. So that's how the sort of review came to be. But the main principles of this review are exactly the same now as they were back in April, albeit in a slightly different context. So the first of the five recommendations made as part of this review is that teaching quality is more important than how lessons are delivered, which I think is really reassuring because what it means is that practice that you know how to deliver lessons in person, all that same good practice still applies to when you're delivering content remotely. So it's reassuring to know that pupils can learn through remote teaching as a starting point, but also that high quality teaching is still high quality teaching. And it suggests that you as a teacher and as a school are reviewing your practice to ensure that there's elements of effective teaching included in the way that you are delivering lessons to your students. So are you still giving really clear explanations? Are you still scaffolding for students? Are you still providing timely feedback for students? All that stuff that you would do in the classroom anyway is still appropriate for remote learning. And it's more important, the high quality teaching is more important than the how or the when the teaching is covered. So what it says in this review is that actually there's no clear difference in terms of how you deliver the content. So when it looks at real time and alternatives through online lessons, there's actually no difference in terms of what the sort of research shows is there. So as an example, one of the examples it gives in the review is a way to structure a lesson that you might be delivering an idea live through like a Teams or a Google Meet or a Zoom or whatever it is you use, or you could do something pre-recorded and upload that for students. There's no difference there in terms of the effectiveness of each of those. But what matters is whether your explanation is building on pupils' prior learning, making sure that pupils' understanding is subsequently assessed, and all that stuff that you know that you would do normally in a classroom. So that's, I think, really reassuring. And there are some ways, as I say, that we at Seneca can support you with this in terms of the way we've designed Seneca, but also some additional things as well. So first of all is the way that we write our content. Now, this goes back to the idea that high quality teaching is still high quality teaching. And when you look at our content, we make sure that we write it in a very specific way to lower cognitive load. So we make sure that each sentence stands alone. You don't have to refer to the previous sentence to understand the current sentence. And we make sure that that applies across all of our courses, so that so that students are accessing high quality learning materials with the way that we write our courses. Another key part of lots of people's practice will be making sure that you are providing work that is pitched appropriately for students. And one way we do that is through automatically differentiating the work. So we on Seneca have lots of different ways that we can differentiate work for students. Be that in an example like we've got on screen here, we've got an example where you can basically mix up the number of missing words. That's a way to differentiate the work. But also, as students go through a learning session on Seneca, the system will know and understand what students do and don't understand from their learning, and it will adapt the questions accordingly. So there's no one session on Seneca. If you were to stand behind two students and basically look at what they were doing, you'd see two very different sessions depending on how the students answered the questions. Another really key part, which was actually mentioned in the review, is feedback. And again, giving timely feedback is a really important part of teaching, as we all know. And Seneca gives immediate feedback for students. So as students answer questions, they're able to get immediate answers or immediately marked work and automatic corrections as well. So you can see here, I've got the first question correct, second question incorrect. So students are learning as they answer questions through the corrections and the feedback that they get. But also you are able to see all that data on your account, which is then really useful for understanding what it is that your students are understanding, what it is that they're not understanding. Now, the other thing to mention when we're talking about student data is one feature that we have that is being used a lot by schools at the moment, particularly to good effect with plugging knowledge gaps, is our smart reassign function. Now, what the smart reassign function it does is it goes down, you'll see each student here on the screen. We've got the data for all the different topics you've set in an assignment. What we can actually then do is ask Seneca, the system, to go through that assignment and pick out how we should set a follow-up activity for those students. So this could be setting work for any students who didn't complete the work at the most basic level of intervention, but you could also look at specific scores that students got and setting follow-up tasks on where students haven't achieved quite as well as you'd like them to. And remember that the system will learn and adapt based on what happened last time. So it won't be the same session that students revisit. It will be based on the information we have and the understanding we have on what students understand from the content. Now, the final thing that is mentioned in this first section of the review is looking at making sure that you're understanding, that you're assessing students appropriately. And again, we provide you with an option to do this with our free accounts. So you can actually do all this. There's standardized assessments for all the subjects. And these can be thought of as sort of end of topic tests. If you haven't seen these before, what you need to do is just add them to your class so you can start to set them for your students, and then you can see all the data based on these end of topic tests. So the second point made in the review is that that students have access to technology and how important that is, and that this is particularly important for disadvantaged pupils. Now, this is, I think, probably quite clear to most of us, because almost all remote learning uses digital technology and requires access to both computers and the internet. So making sure that that's available to pupils where you can is really important. Now, many of the reviews looked at the idea that a lack of access to technology was a significant barrier, as you could imagine, and that it's important to make sure that this is particularly in place for disadvantaged pupils because they're more likely to be affected by the lack of technology. On the sort of slightly different angle on this that I thought was quite interesting when I was sort of looking over the review was they also talk about in this section about thinking about the understanding how to use technology as part of this same access to technology strand. So this is thinking about our pupils and teachers being given support and guidance to use specific platforms effectively. And are they these new forms of technology being implemented effectively? And that doesn't have to be in-person training necessarily. It doesn't have to be a webinar like this. It could be informal training. It could be self-directed training through online training and things like that. Now, I know the government's been working really hard, and it's still sort of a bit of friction about getting devices out to pupils who need it most. But yeah, anything you can do as a school, I appreciate you're probably doing all this already. But it's really important to make sure your students have access to devices. Now, again, thinking about Seneca and how we can support with this, obviously we can't support with providing hardware, so that is, computers or iPads or things like that. But what we do is we make sure that Seneca is available on any device a student has or a teacher has. So whether they're on their laptops, whether they're on a tablet, or whether they're on a phone, they can access and use Seneca. So that hopefully hits almost all of your students, if not all, and make sure that they are able to access the learning on Seneca. But on top of that, we also talked about understanding how to use Seneca. And we make sure we spend a lot of time making sure that sort of the setup process is really clearly explained for teachers and students. And this is just an example from the teacher accounts. When you set up a class, you've just got these 5 steps to set up your class. And at any point, you'll see there's the Get Help button there. So that links to a video of me talking through how to do each of the different steps, depending whichever one you're looking for. So we provide lots of support. But if you're struggling with anything, there's always our help center, which you can access. Again, loads and loads of commonly asked questions by teachers, and also videos of me showing you how to do specific things. And then failing that, there's always my lovely colleague Olivia, who works as our customer service person. She is available to support you with any questions that you have for our customer support team. And she's happy to help with any of those if you can't find the answers in any other places. Now, the third suggestion in this review looked at peer interactions and just how important they are for motivating and improving learning outcomes. Now, this was evident in multiple reviews that were looked at as part of the EEF review, and they highlighted the importance of peer interaction, especially during remote learning, because it's something that is so ingrained in classrooms, but it can be severely lacking when it comes to a remote learning perspective. And the review says, and it's an important way to make sure that you are, as we say, motivating pupils and also to improve students' outcomes as well. And some of the strategies that were explored in this were peer marking and also feedback, and also sharing models of good work and providing opportunities for live discussion. Now, these things sound very good in practice. I admit and I concede that some of these things are harder to do actually when it comes down to it in a lesson. And I've spent a lot of time over the last 6 months or so thinking or working with schools to basically understand the significant barriers that they're facing around these things. And something that always comes up is something like live discussion. How on earth do you have live discussion constructively on Zoom with 30 students? It's very difficult, or it can be very difficult. But there are some tools to think that you could use to think about doing this in a slightly different way that still provide that collaboration opportunity for students, but just in a slightly different way. So one app that I'd really recommend is something called Miro. If you haven't come across Miro, it's a really powerful tool. It's like a collaborative mind mapping tool almost. So you can invite your students to this, and you can see what all your students are up to. You can create boards where it's sort of structured like this one, or you can have it completely blank slate. It's up to you. And that sort of opportunity for peer interaction and discussion is potentially a really powerful way to do this. The other thing that you can do on Seneca is that you can actually also use the data to sort of motivate and drive pupils. So by sharing this sort of information with your pupils on how well they've done in different topics, or like leaderboards and things like that, can be a really strong motivator for pupils. And that's why we provide so much data for you on sort of a topic level. You could look at this, or you can sort of look at it on a slightly broader, sort of higher level, looking at the data. So we can look at like total learning time or average scores overall, things like that, where you can use these to share these with students to sort of motivate them to learn more and to compete with each other. There's also, from the students' perspective, that we have these leaderboards that students can see and compete with everybody globally. So for this chemistry course, they can see how they compare to everyone else. You can see I'm there in the middle, strong carbon, which is my pseudonym on Seneca, and I'm not doing very well. I'm 190,000th or something. But I can see this rise and fall as I study more. And again, that helps to motivate pupils, and they can compare their ranking with their peers and things like that. And as I say, that's available on a sort of global basis. The fourth suggestion is that, or the fourth recommendation from the review is that you basically put time and resource into supporting students to work independently, because this has been shown to be able to improve outcomes. And while this is something, obviously the situation we're in with school closures and students working at home is not good for the students' education, there is a potential opportunity to improve independence here. And because when students are learning at home, they're not going to have you as the teacher available to ask questions that they might do in class. And this was identified by multiple reviews as a really high value strategy to sort of improve pupil outcomes. And they also said that this was particularly important for disadvantaged pupils, because there's a lot of evidence to suggest that sort of the metacognition skills and the self-regulation skills that are needed to become more independent will particularly support and develop disadvantaged pupils. So some of the suggestions they give as part of this review, again, is looking at even simple things like prompting students to reflect on their work and consider how they could improve it. It's a form of independent learning. Also thinking about making sure students have thought about the strategies they will use when they get stuck before they get stuck. So making sure you have sort of a way for students to access support as and when they need it. But also even things as simple as a checklist of activities to tick off, so students can sort of monitor their own work and work through it at their own pace, or thinking about daily plans that students can follow, like they would a timetable if you don't provide timetables for your students while they're on remote learning. I know a lot of schools do, but if you don't, that's another good way to sort of help students structure their own work. Now, again, a couple of ways that we can support with developing independence through Seneca is, firstly, with our courses. You'll see, this is just a screenshot from the student's view. You'll see all the topics listed here for this biology course, and you'll also see the little circles to the right-hand side. This will basically give students an indication on how well they've done when they've previously studied these topics. So if students are looking for things to do and trying to self-direct their learning, they can use this to basically sort of prioritize what they should focus on by focusing on the areas that they've done least well in the past. And that's available to all students. Now, just in case your school is a premium school, there are also some premium features that will support students' independent learning. One of them is called Wrong Answer Mode. And what Wrong Answer Mode does is it basically brings together all of students' wrong answers into one place, and it will allow students to focus on the areas that they struggle with most. So you can see here, ordered by the number of questions I've got wrong, I can see the different questions the different topics that I've struggled with in the past. Again, that helps students to focus on the areas that they should be focusing on. But then another premium feature, if you work in a premium school, is called Smart Learning Mode. And Smart Learning Mode basically takes our AI to the next level, if you like, and it will provide students with a more customized timetable, if you like, to help students understand what they should be revisiting and when they should be revisiting it. So it looks at data like how long it's been since students have studied different topics, how well they've done, how well they've done linked topics, all these other bits of data that you can use to basically curate an order for students. We provide that with Smart Learning Mode through our premium packages. Now, the fifth and final way that the review looks at, or suggestion from the review that the EF have written, is that it's acknowledging really that there are different approaches to remote learning, and each of those different approaches suit different types of content and different pupils. Now, again, this might be something that you sort of realize already, but the research backs that up as well. So there are so many different approaches to remote learning, and each of them have different strengths and weaknesses. So what the review says is that teachers should be making sure that they're reflecting and thinking about the different approaches they take and the effectiveness of those approaches, and making sure that they're suitable for the students you're teaching, the subject you're teaching, and also the age of the pupils as well. So the example given in the review is that games have been shown to be really effective in supporting pupils to understand and develop vocab in MFL subjects, but there's less evidence to support games that are effective to support learning in other subjects. Just being aware that there are differences across different subjects and different types of content the way you could deliver it. Now, the review also talks about the importance of retrieval practice and says that self-quizzing can help students to retain knowledge and ideas, but it doesn't replace other forms of assessment. So it's important to still be assessing your pupils alongside the retrieval practice and self-quizzing that you're doing with your students. So some ways that we think about this on Seneca and supporting your students is with, first of all, retrieval practice and the acknowledgement that is a really powerful tool. About 80% of what a student sees when they learn on Seneca is retrieval practice, and the other 20% is knowledge. So that's going to support the idea that key ideas and knowledge can be retained longer through retrieval practice. But as we say, it's not a replacement for assessment. So we also provide other courses for free. The screenshot I've got behind this is from our standard courses, but we've also got our diagnostic misconceptions courses, which help students to identify misconceptions and correct them. And then also our standardized assessment courses, which I mentioned earlier, that these help to look at on a sort of end of topic tests, if you like, and then vocab courses for MFL as well. And those are available for free. And again, if you are in a school that has access to premium, there's also a whole load of other courses that you gain access to as well. Everything from our predicted paper courses, which are exam style questions, to content targeting specific grade boundaries, looking at 7 to 9s or 4 and 5s, but also like ready-made flashcards and all the other different types of premium courses we have. In case you're in a premium school, I'd recommend using a mixture of the free and the premium courses in collaboration, because the variety of content is really powerful. But also, if you're just in a school that has access to free courses as well, there's lots of good free content there for you to use. Now, the final suggestion, which is not directly linked to one of the 5 suggestions in the EEF review, but is something that we're seeing schools use a lot at the moment, and it's been very effective for some schools. And it's completely free, so there's no need to dip into any budgets or anything like that. This is our parent accounts. So parent accounts provide parents with access to the data on their child's learning. All we need you to do basically is, if you want to use it, just let parents know it exists. So there's a few different ways we can do that. If you, we found the sort of SMS sending out to be the most effective, but there are other methods as well. And I'll post these resources in the chat now for you. So if you want access to any of them, all you need to do is click on one of those links, and that will give you access to the resources to help share the premium help share the sort of parent account with the parents of your students. So that's basically all I wanted to share with you in today's session. As a reminder, as I say, there's 5 key things that we've looked at. And it's time to just have a quick look at some questions. So I'm just going to run through these quickly. So Claire says that she finds that students who can't spell very well or are dyslexic get them wrong because they haven't spelled the word right. Is there any way to get around this? So when students have to free type answers into Seneca, there is an amount of leeway we give dependent on the length of the word. So that is something that we provide all the different sort of synonyms as well. So students can sort of write words that they may think about rather than the words that we're looking for. But yeah, so there is a certain amount of leeway built in already, Claire. Okay, Sophie says, is there a way for teachers to see leaderboards for students in their school where they sit within the school, or would that be sitting the global leaderboard? So again, I haven't touched on this, Sophie, in this session, but something like the whole school student level data is something we provide with premium. We don't provide it for our free users, unfortunately, but you can see it on a class level for free. So yeah. Fiona says we give Seneca certificates to our school and class leaders. That sounds like a good idea. So T. Scott says, what are your most popular topics? So I can tell you off the top of my head, our most popular subjects are the sciences and the humanities, closely followed by then I think it's English is the most popular after that. Then I wouldn't know after that. I'd be making it up after that. So I'll stop there. But on a topic level, I'm not sure what that would be. I don't have that off the top of my head, I'm afraid. Nicola says, I would really like dance courses as a course. Any plans? So yes, we plan to add as many, the full curriculum in time. Obviously, it takes time for us to do that. But I'll pass your request on to our content team, Nicola. Okay, Claire asks for the prices of premium, as does someone else who's anonymous. So the best thing to do if you have a question around premium is if you send me your email in a direct message on the chat, or if you just email me, which I'll write my email in the chat now, then I'm happy to sort out a quote for you, and we can maybe book a time to give you a quick demo as well. So Ms. Maggie says, I teach sociology A-level and Seneca is amazing for that. Thank you, Ms. Maggie. But I also teach a popular level 3 criminology diploma. Any chance you could add that? So again, I'd refer to what I said earlier with the dance course. This is something that we will add in due course. We plan to, as I say, add all these, diplomas and BTECs as well, and the other GCSEs and A-levels we don't yet offer. So yeah, they will come in time. Currently, we offer 25 different subjects on Seneca, so it's over 95% of the exams sat in the UK. So we've got better coverage than anyone. But yeah, we have aspirations to continue to add to that. Okay, Matt says he believes he's part of a school that has access to premium, but he's not sure how to access the premium materials. So the best way to do that, Matt, is if you just contact our customer support team or send me an email. I'm happy to sort of help out with supporting you to get access to that. Suki says, will there be BTEC courses? So yeah, I've already covered that. And Steve asks about GCSE DT. Yes, so we have GCSE DT already. So you'll be able to access and use that already. A question from Abby says, can you export the leaderboards to Excel? So you can export the data that I showed you. So anything you see on the teacher account, you can export to Excel. So wherever you see data on your class, you just press the CSV button, and that will just download it to a spreadsheet for you. David asks, are the standardized assessments coming for other subjects that are already covered? useful given the current evidence gathering situation. So the specific example is CIE, computer science. So yes, again, this is something we'll look to add in time, definitely. Okay. So Amanda says, thank you for the warfare section in history, virtually the only one who has it, and it's a lifesaver. Well, great, I'm pleased to hear. Okay, so that looks like all the questions from anyone. If there are any final questions, then please do get them in the chat. But otherwise, the last thing to say is thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it's not an easy time to be a teacher or a middle or senior leader in a school at the moment. So keep going, and it will get better, I'm sure, at some point. But yeah, I hope some of the tools I've shown you today can help you with that. And yeah, best of luck for the future. Any ideas or suggestions or questions you have, you'll get an email from me after this session. So just feel free to hit reply to that, and I'll be happy to help. Thank you very much and have a good evening.